Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for watching this video. We will create part 2 of this video. In that part 2, we will discuss about exception handling. In this part 1, we will completely discuss about the requirement gathering from where you will start to call the BIP report in OIC before creating Oracle integration to invoke the BIP report, how you will test that BIP is working fine, and what all mandatory details you need to be have before going to start the integration. Everything we are going to learn in this video. Let's begin. If you will see, we will follow total 7 steps to complete the development, complete this video. The first step, we will get the BIP report details from the Fusion ERP application. For example, we will get the report name. I will explain you each and every point that from where you will get all these small details so that you will not get any mistake while developing the integration or will not face any issue. So the report details like report name, the complete path of that report, parameters of that report, and the output format of the report. That all are the mandatory details to have so that you can invoke the BIP report from that OIC. And before going to create integration, we will test that BIP report using SOAP UI, that is the application where we can execute our SOAP services. So that we know that we have the SOAP services to invoke the BIP report from Fusion, so we will use that one. Then we will create SOAP connection in OIC so that we can invoke that BIP report using the SOAP connection when we will use it in integration. Then we will create ATP connection. That ATP connection will help us to insert data into the ATP table. And then we require opaque schema.xsd file. This opaque schema will let us help us to convert the base64 code into file reference. So we know that whenever we are calling that SOAP services for that BIP report, it's returning BIP data into base64 code, and we have to convert that base64 code to make that file. So all these things we are going to learn in this video. And in last, we will create app-driven integration where we can add the parameters. That parameters we can pass to the BIP report, and in the response of that integration we will pass something like success or error, all the details we can pass. So as you can see from the first screen, you can easily find that we are going to create BIP report, and that BIP report we are going to invoke in OIC, and that BIP report having one parameters. And once we will get the data in OIC, we will insert the data into ATP table. All the things we are going to learn in this video. So let's move to the next step. So as you know that we required opaque schema in OIC to convert the file base64 code into file. So this is the opaque schema structure. You can find this on Google, or that you can make a note of it and you can save the file as opaque.xsd. Whatever name you want to give, you can give, but the extension will be .xsd. So this is the opaque schema. You can see the element name as an opaque element. This opaque element will take input as a base64 code, and this code will convert that base64 code into the file reference. And now after that, I told you that before going to start integration, we will test that report. We will invoke the BIP report for testing purpose using the SOAP UI web application. That SOAP UI application will help us to execute the SOAP services to invoke the BIP report. So this is the web services above you can see. So here Fusion server is your Fusion URL, and that is the API, the web services details. That external report WSS services !WSDL. That is the WSDL, or that is the SOAP web services. And here you can see this is a simple payload when we will invoke the BIP reports. So this is the report details, that report name with the directory, the complete directory. And here you can see this is the parameters, report parameters. Remember, this report parameters is case sensitive, so you should not miss anything, that you cannot write capital or small. Whatever you used in the data model, you have to use same here in the name. This is the value of BIP report, and the attribute format I told you that what kind of file it is going to return. It is CSV or XML or whatever it can be. And here you can see size of data chunk download we use as -1. So -1 denotes that any negative number denotes that whatever data we have in that specific BIP report response, return all the data. That's why we are passing -1 here. I will create separate videos where we will explain that if our BIP report having large data, how we can handle. So all these things we will learn in next future video. Now you can see this is the integration flow, the step and flow we are going to use in integration. It was the flow of the complete solution, that what we need to do, And this is the complete flow of integration, that how we can achieve the scenario. So first we will add the REST connection, or that a endpoint as a trigger to configure the request and the response payload of that integration, so that in request we can pass the date parameter, and in response that integration can return that successfully completed, successfully loaded, or error while calling the BIP. All that kind of things we can return in the response. And then once we will configure the REST trigger endpoint, we will add SOAP endpoint to invoke the BIP report. So we will use SOAP web services that we already created the SOAP connection to invoke the BIP report. So once we will invoke the BIP report, it will return the base64 code. Then we will convert that base64 code into file reference with the help of a stage file we are going to use in integration. I will explain. And if we will be sure about that file we generated having the data, then only we are going to read the file, else no need to read the file. So in case of if we don't have data, just we will go in the integration mapping and map the response as no data found or something like that, and integration will be end here only. And suppose if we have data in the data file received from BIP report, then we will iterate the loop over the record whatever we have for the BIP by reading the data file. Then here you can see, once we have the data file, then read the file data, and we will iterate the loop, and inside the loop we will add the endpoint ATP connection to insert data into that ATP table. And once that will be done, our loop will end iteration will be completed, and that will be the end of our integration. Then after that we will go and add the mapping as a response, so that that integration completed, inserted that much of record, all that kind of things. And once the flow will be complete, after that flow will be completed. So the same, I created the flow chart. You can see the first, it will start from OIC. Integration will be started. It will invoke the SOAP endpoint. SOAP endpoint will invoke the BIP report, get the data, and it will return the BIP report data as base64 code to OIC. And after that, that base64 code will be converted into the report file. And if we will have data in the BIP report file, then only we are going to read the data. We will iterate the loop over data. We will iterate the loop until we got the last record of the file, and we will insert data into that ATP table. So we will invoke the ATP endpoint to insert data into table. Data will be inserted, and this flow will be in the loop until we will reach the last endpoint. And once loop will be added and over, we will add the mapping of the integration that successfully inserted all these things, and integration will be end. And in case of if we don't have data in the BIP report response, we will not iterate it, or we will not process anything. Just we will map the response of the integration that BIP report doesn't have data, that kind of thing, and integration will be end. So that kind of things we are going to create in the video. And remember, this is the part 1 where we will simply achieve this solution. In the part 2, we will add the exception handling block, so that we can have the exception handling approach too. So now let's move to the instance. I will show you the BIP report and how you will get the report directory, report parameters, all these things. You can see this is our Fusion application. For moving to the report, we have to go to the tools, and inside the tools we have report and analytics. So you can move to the report and analytics first way, or the another way directly. You can remove the URL from that after.com, and here you can add it analytics. Once you will enter, it will load the analytics page, that report and analytics page. And here you have to find the BIP report directory. So maybe you are OIC developer and that some other team member who developed the BIP report. So once the report will be developed, they will provide you the details of the report. So they will give you, this is the directory of the report, this is the report parameters, all the things they will provide you. So based on that, you cannot blindly go and create integration. So before going to create, you should go and test the report, that report is working fine or not, that you don't have any like access issue or anything. That's why we have to verify the report from front end. It will be easy for us, right? So I will go to the report here. You can see I have already created the report just for simple report, so that I can show you here. So you can see this is the report, my report, and this inside the data model folder we have the data model of the report. And the directory, if you will see, directory of this report is, you can see share folder we are not going to use. We will start from custom integration report, and inside that we have the report. So the same, you can see I already copy the path here, and this is the parameter. So I can show you. So how you can get the parameters. For writing the text from here, it's difficult, right? You can be missed something. So instead of doing that one, what you can do, you can just click on this drop down icon and just go to the schedule. So once you will go to the schedule, you will get the complete path of that BIP report. And I always suggest copy the report path from here only. So you can see this report. This is the report path. So just you have to click on select all and just go and you can paste anywhere. So you can see this is our BIP report path. And now it's time to get the report parameters. So you can see if I will go return back, report parameters you will get from the data model only. If I will run this report, you will be able to see the parameters. But sometimes this is the label of parameter. This is the name of that parameter, right? So sometimes it can be different than the parameters, actual parameters, right? So what you need to do, you need to go to the data model, and from the data model, you need to pick the report parameters name. So I will go to the expand, and here this is our data model. So I will edit this one. And you can see this is our data model, that query we written, and here we have parameters. So just click here and you can see this is the parameters. So this is the actual parameters we have to use, right? You can see this is the display label. So in this case, display label and the parameters name both are same, but it can be different. That's why I always suggest go and pick the parameters from here only. So I will copy. So if you will see, I will change the parameter name as p invoice date. So this is the label. Remember, this is the text, but the parameters name is this one, p underscore inv. So I will make a copy of this one here. You can see it's already, I have make a copy. Now we already get the BIP report parameters name, BIP report directory, and let me save so that it can change. I will show you how to run that one too. So now again I will go to the data model. Now it's time to get the report the output format. What kind of output it is going to return? It is going to return the PDF format, or it's going to return CSV, XML, whatever it is. So how you can check that one? So just you have to edit this report, XDO report. Once you will click on that edit, if suppose you don't have that kind of access, you can ask the report team. They will provide you all the details. So click here, view as a list. Once you will click view as a list, you will be able to see this template on all these things. Here you can see in the output format, we have all the output format. So whatever it will make a tick here, you will be able to access that kind of response only. So here you can see we have the data as XML and the CSV. It means that that report can return two format, that is XML or CSV, and the default format is CSV here. So if you will see, while calling the BIP report, if you will not provide any output format, it will by default return CSV file. And if you will provide any of XML or CSV, then it will return based on that. So whatever you will provide. So now if you will see, this is our report. So we already get all the details, right? So here format can be CSV or XML, right? Both. So we can have both format for that report response, right? So now if we will go to run this report, you will be able to see the report parameter is changed to invoice date. If I will select any date from here, apply. So this BIP report will return the data based on the date we provided. As you can see, that P invoice date is 1424, and same you can see P invoice date is 24401. This is the date, right? We provided here, and these all are the column. So this is the CSV format. If you want to check, go to XML, you can click here data. It will be display data in XML. So whatever format we want, we can check. So now we have the BIP report complete details. Now it's time to test that BIP report or invoke this BIP report from the services, from the SOAP. So for executing the SOAP services, we have SOAP UI. You can download the SOAP UI from Google search only. That will be easy. And for that, getting this one, we have the SOAP web services. This is our SOAP web services. You can see even in the PPT I display. So this is the Fusion URL. So this value will be same for each and every project, each and every employee, each and everyone. But the value will be changed. This is the URL. This is the Fusion URL. Even HTTPS will be the same. This is the Fusion URL. If suppose you are executing this BIP report on test instance, so this URL will be for test instance. If it is for dev instance, you can just replace this one. If it is the prod, you have to just replace this host as a prod. So that kind of thing. So this is our web services. This web services we will use in OIC connection, right? So now first we have to test this web services. So I will copy this one and go to the SOAP. So as I have already created one. So instead of showing this one, I will create a new one. Right here you can see, if I will explain. So you can see, for invoking the BIP report, only mandatory parameters we require, that attribute format, that is CSV or XML, based on your report output format, and the parameters name can be different based on the requirement. So right now in our report we have only one parameter. So you can see parameters name value, inside that we have item, and inside that item we have name, that is the parameters name, and inside the name we have value, and inside the value we have item, that is the value of parameters. And remember, in this SOAP call, everything is case sensitive. So you can see this CSV will be in a small letter. Parameters, this parameter will be same as the parameter name we copy from the BIP report data model. And you can see the date, this is the value of the date, and value can be different, right? And this is the directory of the BIP report which we already copy here, right? And here this is the size of download chunk we provided as -1. So how you will prepare this one? So we already here having the web services. I will copy this one and go to this SOAP UI and go to the file and create new SOAP project. And here you have to provide the initial WSDL, that is the web services, WSDL, right? And now here you have to provide the project name. So I will give the name demo BIP and just click on OK. So it will load all the operation inside that WSDL. Sometimes when creating this web services, you can have some mistakes. For verifying that this web services is working fine, even your host, that Fusion is working fine, what you can do, you can just copy this URL, and instead of putting that URL here, you can go to the browser, and in browser you can search. So once you will search, you will be able to see the XML code. And this, if you are able to see this XML code, it means that your web services is working fine. Now this can be loaded into the SOAP UI, that SOAP UI application, right? So now here we have to go to the SOAP UI. So you can see that inside this demo BIP, we have one operation, that is run report. This run report is responsible for invoking the BIP report using SOAP. So just I will click request one. So once I will click on request one, you will see new windows open. This is the actual window where we have to provide the BIP report details. And you can see this is just similar like earlier. So what we have to do, I will remove all the extra value which we don't require. So generally you can see in the report request, this XDO properties list we don't require, because this XDO property list is already defined in the BIP report. So I will remove this one. After that, you can see attribute calendar, attribute format, locale. So this attribute format, calendar, all the things is already mentioned in this the template here in the report. So we don't need to provide anything here. So what I will do, the calendar I will delete. Format we have to pass as CSV or XML. So I will use XML here. If you don't want to pass anything, that whatever default format you have here, it will automatically return data in that format only. As I already explained you the format, right, from where you will get. You can see the default output format is CSV. If I will not provide XML, it will return the data in CSV. Now attribute locale, template, all these things we don't require. So I will delete this from here. Instead of deleting, you can remove the question mark too. So I just want to delete so that it will not be much data here. Dynamic data source we don't require. So I will delete this dynamic data source. Flatten pattern, these things also we don't require. Now here we have the parameters. Inside the parameter, you can see 0 or more items repeated, more repetition. It means that this item can be repeated based on the parameters. If we have multiple parameters, this tag will be multiple. So we have only one parameter. So inside the item, we have to give the parameters name. So there will be somewhere as name, you can see. So this is our parameters name. So here we have to provide the parameters, and our parameters name is p underscore inv date. So I will just go and provide the parameters name here, and we have to provide the parameters value, file parameters data, just for testing. So inside the name here you can see we have value, and inside the value we have item, the question mark. So instead of question mark we have to provide the value. So just for testing purpose, I will use 01042024. And you can see here it can be multiple. So in case of list of values, we can have the multiple values for that parameters. So right now we don't have anything. I will delete this one, as that was comment it can be. So I will remove all the extra things we don't require here. So here remove everything. Now you can see we have only one parameter. Suppose if you have two parameters, so what you can do, just you have to copy and paste this one below. So suppose you have another parameters that is PINV supplier something supplier. So you can make this is the second parameter and that will be the value. So as of now, we don't have any other parameters. I will remove this one. And now you can see that parameters name is ended here. And after that, you can see we have the report absolute path. This is the actual report with the directory. So this is the actual directory we have already copied. So we'll paste here. Remember, this parameter name and the directory is case sensitive. You should not do any mistake. Like instead of S, you cannot make at capital S. It will throw an error. So I will make this S here. And in the report data, we don't need anything. Just we require the chunk, the size of download chunk, right? So here I will provide -1, and we don't require that the app parameters will delete. So this is our request payload to invoke the BIP report from SOAP. Now in the SOAP UI, we have to provide the Fusion credentials, the user of that Fusion application by which we are running this integration, running the BIP report. That user should have the access of all these things. So go to the SOAP, and here if you will go to the authentication, here you have to go and add the authentication, and here you have to select the basic and just click on OK. It will ask the user ID and password. So here I will provide the username and password. So I will give the name as erp.user and I will give the password. If you will not provide the credentials, it will not display the data. It will not return you the data. So now I have already given the ID password. Just click here. It will hide. Now you have to run this one, the payload. So for running here, we have run icon. Just click here. So once you will click here, it will execute this code and it will return the data. So for checking the data, you can go to the XML, and in XML, you will be able to see the data. So the report context, that is text or XML, as we have given the format as XML, and this is our report byte. This report byte is the base 64 code. You can see this is base 64 code, base 64 code, and the base 64 code is the file data. So whatever data we are getting from the BIP run, whatever data we are getting from here, that's they converted the data into the base 64 code and it's returning the data, right? So here you can see this is the same data we are getting in base 64 code. So if you will convert this one, on converting this one, in my notepad I have already that one, I have already the tool to convert this code, base 64 code, into encode the base 64. I will select this one, go to the plugin, and here I have already installed that decode. So once you will decode, you will be able to see the XML code. And if I will change it to XML language, and if I will go to the plugins, convert the tool, and here I will make it pretty XML. So you can see this is our XML code of the XML value of the BIP report. That BIP report return in the XML value. So you can see these are the column we are receiving from BIP report. Even same XML file we can use while reading the data in OIC. So what I will do, I will just save this one, save this somewhere else. Now here we are going to save in my directory that xxint report.xml. This is our XML file. So save. Now I have already saved this one. So also this the sample of the BIP report you required while while reading the data of the BIP report in OIC. That's why I already created one CSV file. This will be the sample file for loading. If you will go to the SOAP UI again, instead of XML, if I will pass the format as CSV, it will return the base 64 code in CSV format. So if I will run this again, it will return the response. You will be able to see the data that base 64 code is in CSV. So here you can see this is our data, and you can see the content type as the text plain character UTF-8. That is the format for CSV. So if I will copy this one, go to the notepad again. Instead of going to notepad, what you can do, you can go online, search base 64 code, that decode base 64 code. You will find the website, various website. I generally prefer this one. And if you will go to the decode, here you have to paste this base 64 code, and once you will click on decode, it will convert that into the actual data, whatever it is returning from the BIP report. And if you will see here, you will be able to see that CSV file here. You can see the data is in CSV format, right? So whatever we will provide as a report output format, it will return data in that way only, right? So just it for testing purpose, what I will do, again I will use XML here, and the same mapping, friend, remember, whatever mapping we are using here, same mapping we have to use in integration. That's why I used the SOAP UI for reference purpose, so that when in integration I will map, you can be understand, you can be aware about all the point, right? So now we already tested our report. That report is working fine. We are able to access the report using SOAP UI, and we are able to get the data. Even we save the XML format of that BIP report, so that we can use this format while reading the data of the BIP report in OIC. Now it's time to go to the integration side. So if you will go to the integration, here I will use generation 3, OIC generation 3 to create. So if you will see, while explaining what flow I explain you, the flow was that BIP report details we already get. We tested the report using SOAP UI. Now we have to create the SOAP connection. We have to create the ATP connection. That ATP connection will help us to insert data into that database table. And then we need opaque schema, right? So this opaque schema, whatever of things we have done here, right? So in Notepad++, I move to the plugin. Inside the tools, here I use base64 decode. What it has done, it converted that base64 code into the actual file data. So the same way I use to this application, it's taken the input as base64 code, and it's converted into the actual file data. The same thing we have to do in OIC. So how we can do that in OIC? That's why we required opaque schema. I already explained this one, opaque schema, right? So this opaque element will require base 64 code, and base 64 code we are getting from the report response, the SOAP response as a report byte. This report byte. So we will pass this report byte data, that base 64 code data, here in the opaque schema, and it will convert that in base64 code, and it will make as a file data, a file reference in OIC. So now we are already done with that. Now we have to create the SOAP connection, ATP connection, and then we have to create the integration. So just move to the integration part. So for integration also, I made it the flow that in integration we will first add the REST endpoint to configure the request and the response payload. So just move to the integration page. This is our integration. First we have to create the SOAP connection, so that we can invoke the SOAP services. So here in the connection, for creating the SOAP connection, we need to click on this create, and here we have to search the SOAP adapter. So I will search SOAP here. You will be able to see. Just we have to give the name. So I will give the name as XX SOAP con. SOAP con. Now the role I will use as a invoke, because I don't want to use in trigger keyword. I don't want to do anything. Just click on create. So now it will open the page, and the connection status in draft mode. Now here we have to provide the URL, the web service, SOAP web services. You can see this is the visual URL. You can upload, or you can directly put it here. So I have already copied this one. So this is our SOAP visual URL. I will copy this one and provide here. And now after that, we have to provide the user and password. This user and password is the same user and password we used here in the SOAP UI. That one, right? So that it can invoke the BIP reports. I will give the username, and the password I will give. Now once we provided all the details, the user ID, password, that it will be public gateway only, the URL, just we have to test the connection. Click on test. If everything will be fine, that will be tested and validated. So now once it's validated, you can see the configuration process is in 100%. We have to save. It will move draft to configure. When any connection move to the configure, it means that is ready to use in integration. So now we created the SOAP connection. Now we have to create the ATP connection, so that we can insert data into the table, and then we will create one REST trigger connection. Now we will again go and click on create button, and this time we will select the ATP connection, ATP adapter, Oracle ATP, to create ATP connection. Here we have to give the name. So I will give the name as XX ATP con. And here we will select the role as trigger on invoke only. So we will use invoke because we don't want to use this connection as a trigger, right? So in integration only we are going to use. So here just I will click on create. Now here you can see we have to provide the connection details of ATP. So what connection details it required? If you will go to the database, so this is our SQL developer here. In the SQL developer, this is my table. This is my table I created, and in this table only I have to insert the data. So if I can show you here, this is the table where we have to insert the data. So this table is whatever schema or whatever database this table is created, we have to provide the database details here. right? So if how we can check the database details, so if you have already configured the database in SQL developer, same you have to use. For that, just click on the connection, go to the properties, and you will be able to see the user, password, and the wallet. You can see. So generally in ATP, we are using wallet to configure. So this is the wallet, the same wallet we required here. You can see the wallet. And in SQL developer, we don't require wallet password, but here in connection, we require wallet password, and the database service username and the password will be the same. These two. And you can see the service, that is PCSS under ATP1 underscore high. These things we have to provide here in the optional property, that is service name. So all these things I have already make a note of somewhere else. I have to provide here, right? So let me provide. Now you can see I provided all the details, that the service name that's required. Remember all these details, whatever I provided, that's minimum things required while creating the ATP connection. Even some ATP connection having the different credentials, different details to access, that securities. Based on that, you have to provide all the details, right? And all the details, that the wallet, all these things you will get from the DBA team. So I given the security policy, service name, the same service name I use in the SQL developer connection, you can see, and the wallet, user ID, and password, that you can see. The security here, I given the uploaded the wallet.zip file and the wallet password, user of the database, and the database password, user passwords. The access type can be the public gateway. Right now I have public gateway. If it is private or connectivity, then you can choose this one. Now once we provided all the details, we have to go for test. So once we will go for test, that you can see that progress will be increased, and once it's moved to the 100%, then it will be ready to be in configure status. For that, you can see right now it's in draft. Click on save. It will be in the configure status. I already created separate videos where I explain all the things, that how you can create connection, everything. You can go to the playlist and you can check. Now we created this two connection, which is the most important connection we have to use in OIC. Now the one more connection we require, that is REST connection, and that REST connection will be used as a trigger to trigger the integration, to configure the request and the response payload of that integration. So again, I will go for create, and I will select the REST, and I will select the role as trigger, as I don't want to invoke any REST API using this connection. I just want to invoke only I want to just use this connection as a trigger of that integration, so that the integration can be exposed as a REST API, or that integration can have the request and response payload. So just let me give the name as XX REST con. I will give the name as REST trigger con, so that this connection I can use in various integrations. So I giving the name as simple as, just click on create. So as we given the role type as trigger, it will not require any URL or anything, because we are just generally going to use trigger, and it's quite simple, that we are not going to use this connection as an invoke to any API. So now everything is done. You can see the configure process is 100%. Just go and test. If you will select the role type as a invoke or trigger or invoke, then it will ask you the URL, username, password for that. Just go back. So now all the connections created, I will save. All the connection created and all the connection are in configure status. Now the next step is to create the integration. You can see we already here, if you will go to the flow, we already created, get the BIP report details. We already tested the BIP report using SOAP UI. We created SOAP connection, ATP connection. We already have the Opaque schema. And now we have to create the app driven integration. App driven integration only can have the request and response payload. That's why we are not going to create the schedule integration. So I will create app driven integration. And for creating the integration, you can see what it is step we will do. First, we have to add the REST trigger connection, right? So let's go to the integration part here. Now move to the integration, and here we have to create the integration. So I will click on this create, and while creating the integration, you have to select the integration patterns. So you can see what kind of pattern it will be. This is the schedule, and the app driven is converted into the application, or the same, giving name change in the Gen 2 as a application. So application is the same as app driven in Gen 2. So I will select application. Here we have to provide the integration name. So I will give the name as XX AP invoice BIP integration. This access can be replaced by your company code or a organization code, or whatever client you are using, that one. So I am just generally preferring XX only. XX AP invoice BIP integration. The identifier will come automatically. Even you can provide any other identifier. it got removed. Again, I have to go and create here. Identifier you can change, or you can let it be the same as version 1.00 only. URL, everything I don't want to provide. Package you can provide, but it's not mandatory. So just click on create. So once you will click on create, new connection integration will be created, and you can see, as this is app driven or the application, this integration doesn't have any endpoint here. So now we have to add the endpoint to trigger this integration. So for that, we already created connection, that is the REST connection. I will use that one, XX REST connection. So I will select this connection, and here if you will see, the rest of two connections is not displaying here, because the right now we have to add the trigger connection only, the trigger role connection only. That's why, that because the other two was the SOAP and the ATP was invoke type. That's why it's not displaying here. Once we will configure the trigger type, then only we will be able to see the invoke type, or trigger and invoke type. Now here we have to select this connection, and this endpoint, whatever connection we are adding here, that connection called as endpoint, or that everything called endpoint. And here we have to provide the endpoint name. You can see, what do you want to call your endpoint? So this endpoint is going to start the integration, so I will give the name as start, and this is the rest, so I will give the name as rest. Now I don't want to configure anything here, just we have to go continue, so that it will ask the request and request response period. So now once we provided all the details, it will, you can see it asking for the endpoint operations. So as this will be like provide the data, and it will return some data. So I will just use post, so that even we can configure the request and the response payload. So here you can see, you have to provide the resource URI. So what resource URI will be, as we know that REST API having the resource UI, and when we are creating app driven integration using REST trigger, it will be exposed as a REST API. So we have to provide the name. So I will give the name AP invoice BIP. And now here we already selected the method as post. Here we have to configure the request and the response payload. That's why we have to make a tick of configure a request payload for this endpoint. Yes. Configure this endpoint to receive the response. Yes. I don't want to configure any header or custom header or anything, so that I will let me same. Just click on continue. It will ask you to provide the structure of the request payload. So I will select the schema as JSON, and what kind of request payload it will be, we have to provide here. So let me create one request payload. So for creating what kind of request payload we want to give to this integration name, so I want to give the request payload as something that you can see that this report having one parameters, right? So I want to make this as parameters, the request payload. So what I will do, I will make as p_, and we date, and this will value. So whenever user will run the integration, it will provide this value, right? So I didn't provide here anything, it will provided by at the runtime only. So this is our request payload, and here as we have selected JSON, we have option to provide in inline. I will click here, so that I can provide. Now we provided, we'll click on continue. So the request payload is configured. Now we have to go next, and we have to provide the response payload. You can see configure response. So again we will select as a JSON, and what response payload we want. What response payload we want from integration? We want response payload from integration as a status. If integration completed successfully, we want a status as success or error. So I will use some dummy value here. So see the success. It can be success or error based on that one, right? Based on the integration. And I want to provide the message. If there will be any error, we will display the value something like error in integration. All these things we will map in integration, or if everything will be fine, so we will provide the count. So we will provide count like total 10 record inserted into table. That kind of things we want to configure, or we want to return from the integration. So this will be our response payload, and this is our request payload. So now again I will copy this response payload, so that I can configure in the integration only. So here we selected JSON, that's why we have inline option. Click here, provide the format here, click on continue. So if your JSON like request payload, whatever you are going to provide, the payload is correct, it will come here and just you have to go and continue, and it will be display the summary. As we don't require anything, just click on finish. So now you can see trigger endpoint is added to the integration. You can see trigger endpoint is added in the integration trigger, and this is the mapper of this trigger, so that whatever value we will map here, the integration will return that value only. Right now here you can see once we added the endpoint here, right, REST endpoint to configure the request and response payload, we have to invoke the SOAP to call the BIP report, right? For that we already created SOAP connection, so we have to invoke the SOAP connection here. So I generally don't use this canvas, so just I will make as a vertical. So now here in vertical we have to add the SOAP connection. So there is two way to add the any connection here. Just you can go and click on this plus icon, select the connection from here, or you can search. And the another way can we go to the here, click on this icon and select the connection. So you can see whatever connection right now we are able to see, that is invoke type connection or trigger and invoke. Trigger connection you will not be able to find here, because the condition is trigger is already there. In our integration there can be only one trigger, that's why this trigger connection is not displaying here. Now we have to invoke the SOAP, so I will use the SOAP connection, and this is the connection we created, xx SOAP conf. So I will drag this SOAP connection here. So once you will drag this SOAP connection here, it will open the configuration page, and here we have to provide the endpoint name. So I will give the name as invoke BIP. So this endpoint is going to invoke the BIP. So I will give the name as invoke BIP and go to next. And here we have to select the operation. So you can see the select services is external report WSS services, and the operation, what will be the operation? If you will see here, here you can see that the report request, and inside that here you can see, if I will go here and you will see inside the project, you can see external report WSS services. Inside that we have the operation as run report. This is the operation we use here, right? Run report. So the same operation you have to select. So click here in the drop down and you have to select the run report. So you can see run report is the operation here. Even you can see run report, report definition, template, all these things you will be able to find here also. You can see the remove template and the submit report, update, all these things is in the LOV. Now we selected the run report. After selecting run report, you can see all these things automatically comes. This is the fault. So that fault, it means that when the SOAP will run, if there will be any fault, so that three kind of fault exception will be there. So now don't worry about all these things, go and continue. Now I don't want to configure anything, send attachment, anything here, just let it be the same, go to continue. And you can see this is the summary page having the same URL. This is the same URL we configure while creating the connection, right? And you can see the select port and the operation we are going to perform, that is run report, everything here, right? Go and click on finish. Now you can see the connection, SOAP connection is already added here, right? Now here we have to provide the mapping. In the mapping we have to provide the value, all this value, whatever value we provided here, same value we have to provide in the mapping. So open the mapping by double click here, and the mapping, what value we have to provide? If you remember, there were too many values, right? We remove all the things and we just provided only value for few columns, right? Few attributes, that is the report attribute format, parameters as a name, the same way we have to provide. So you can see this is the attribute format, right? So we'll search attribute format here. You can see inside the body we have run report. So if you will expand the body, you will get run report, and inside the run report we have report request. So once we will expand, we will be able to see the report request, and inside the report request we have the attribute format. So just search the attribute format here. You can see we already deleted all these things, so here you don't need to delete. If you will not provide any value, it will not pass the value to API. So you can see this is the attribute format. You can see the attribute format, and what is it? Is XML. So here attribute format, just right click here, go to the create target node, and here we have to provide the value. So I will provide the value as XML. Click here, you can see now this value is mapped. After that, you can see attribute format, we have the value as parameters name value. So we have to go to the parameters name value. You can see the parameters name value. Once you will expand, inside that we had items. You can see this is the item. I told you if we had multiple parameters, we can copy this one. That's why here you will be see it is array element. So right now we have only one element. So I will expand this item. Inside the item we have as name, and inside the name, this is the name of the our parameter. So I will copy this one. Inside the item I will find the name and we will provide this value. Inside the item I will find the name. So you can see this is the name. Just click here, go to the create target mode, and here we have to provide the value in the single quotes. So now we provided the name, and here we have to provide after the name, inside that name, after name we have one value, and inside the value we have item. So after name, if you will go, you can see this is the value, and once you will expand the value, you will be able to see the item. So this is the item where we have to provide the value, and that item is the array type, because I told you if we have the LOV type parameters, this value can be repeated. So this is the value we have to map. So instead of providing the hard coded value here, this value we are getting from the request payload of the integration. So I will map that here. So if you will go to the left hand side, you can see the start rate. This is the rest trigger we added. Inside that we have the request wrapper. Once you will expand, you will be able to see the pinv date. This is the same request wrapper we added here, the request payload pinv date. So I will map this value here, so that at runtime whatever user will provide this value in this request payload, that will be mapped to the parameters of the BIP call. After that, what we have done, after that if you will go to the SOAP, after that we added the report absolute path. So you have to go to report absolute path. You can see after the item we have the report absolute path. So here only we have to provide the report path. So this is the report path. We have already copied. I will copy this one, and we will provide the path here. Click target node and in single quotes paste here. I will create part 2 of this video where I will remove all the hard coded value and provide all this value from the lookup only. So I will show you in the part 2 of that video, and where in that part 2 only I will show you the handle the exception, all the thing. Now after report absolute path, what value we provided? After the report absolute path, we provided the size of data chunk. So go and find where is the size of data chunk. You can see this is the size of data chunk. Right click on this create target node, and here we have to provide value as -1. Done. So now we configure the endpoint and we provided the mapping, the required mapping to invoke the SOAP services, right? So go back. Now you can see in integration, we added the SOAP endpoint to invoke the BIP report. Now once this will be invoked, it will return the response as a base64, this value, right? And this value we have to convert into the file reference, right? This value as we converted from the website or that from the notepad only. For converting this, we have the Opaque schema. You can see this is the Opaque schema, right? And this Opaque schema we can use in the stage file in OIC, right? So here we have to drag the Opaque schema after this SOAP call, right? After the SOAP call, we have to go to the action, and here in the actions, we have to select the stage file. So you can see this is our stage file. I will drag this stage file here only, just after this one. So why we are not able to drag? Let me see. Now here I drag, and here we have to provide the name. So as this endpoint is going to convert the base64 code, so I will use that decode base64 code. Now go continue, and here you can see we are here. So once we will decode that base64 code, it will create the file. So in OIC, creating the file is known as the write file. So I will select the write file, and here we have to specify the file name, what kind of file it will create. So here you can see the it's going to return the file as XML. So I will give the file name here. So I will give the name as report.xml. You can give any name here, report.xml. This is the file name we use. The same thing we will use while reading the data, right? So file name I used as this one, and here we have to provide the file directory where we have to write the file. While once we will convert, where we have to write, so the directory we have to provide, and this will be the OIC directory, this directory only, not the SFTP or any directory. So I will just use temp, right? So here this will be the directory temp. Now here you can see I don't want to use append operation or anything, so just we have to write the file, click continue. So now it will ask the schema. So as we know that this is the XML schema, XSD schema. So here instead of that, we have to go and we have to select the XML XSD schema and go continue, and here we have to provide the file. So we have to provide the XML file. So I will select the XML file here, So now you can see this is the opaque.sxg same schema file I used here. I loaded the file here. Now after that you can see select the schema element, that is opaque element. This is the same here we are able to see, right? Now go to continue, and you can see this is the summary page where we are displaying getting all the details. Just go and finish. Now you can see in this step we added the stage write operation to convert this base64 code of response of this endpoint to file reference. So we have to provide the base64 code, right, value in the mapping. So double click here. In the mapping you can see this is the opaque element I told you, and this opaque element required base64 code. And where we are getting the base64 code? We are getting base64 code from the SOAP response and in the report byte. So if you will go to the SOAP endpoint, you can see invoke BIP response. This is the SOAP. If you will expand here, inside the run report response, you can see this is the run report response. Inside that we have run report return. If we will expand here, you can see run report return, and inside that run report return we have the report byte. Once you will expand, you will see the report byte. This report byte we have to map here. So now we mapped all, right? So everything is done. We have to just validate the mapper and go back. Go back. Now in this endpoint, we converted the base64 code into the file reference. Now we have to check that file having the data or not. And how we can check? So why we can check by simply testing the integration, that what is the length of this file if we have data, and what is the length of file if we don't have data. That only we can check. So when it will generate the file will have some size, and this endpoint will return the size. So the way only we can check. So just save the integration, and just for testing purpose we will run this integration to check the size of the file in case of empty. So here you can see the integration in draft mode, so it will not be activated. So for removing this one, we have one error. If you will click here, you can see the error is related to the business identifier. Each and every integration should have mandatory one business identifier value. For that you can click here, and once you will click here, you will be able to see the business identifier. So what I will do, whatever value user will provide as a payload, request payload, I will map as a business identifier. Now everything is done. We'll click here. Now you will be able to see that error is removed, and now status is configure unsave. So I will make it save, and once it is saved, just we have to go back to run the integration. Right now we have not mapped anything in the response, so this integration will not return anything right now. So you can see integration status is in configure. We have to activate it. Click on this power button. Go to the, like I just selected the debugger mode so that I can show the log message. Click here in the active. Now it will take some time to activate the integration. Once the integration will be activated, we will run the integration. So it's activated. Click here in the three dot here, and once we will click here, we will see the option as run. So click here in the run. Once we will click on the run, you can see in the body we have to provide the parameters value pint date, and what value we want to provide. You can see if this is the value we provide while running the integration, so it will run the BIP report with this data. So click on run. It will take some time to execute the integration, complete the integration, then it will show the flow. We can check here, right? You can see this is the details here. Now if you will refresh this one, you will be able to show all the endpoints working fine, right? So now what our requirement is, we have to check the file size when it having the data, and when we are creating the file. So you can see decode base64 code is the endpoint where we are creating the file by converting the base64 code. So if you will go to the process here, decode, if you will see the log message, you can see this is the file reference it's generated, and in the file reference here we have the file size. You can see the file size is 2140 byte. This is the byte size. This size is in byte only, right? So if we have data, if data size can be greater than 210, right, that size can be anything. As we have few records, the few column, that's why size having this one. And suppose if we run the integration with invalid value, right, invalid value, it means that invalid data parameter. Suppose we provide a 25, so there will not be any data with 25 these parameters. Once I will run this one, it will invoke the BIP report, but it will not, once it will create the file size will be very less. You can see It's invoke everything is ran, right? Here you can see. So when we provided this value, if you will see the SOAP call, this invoke BIP, if you will expand here, if you will see the response, the invoke, this is the BIP call, right? So if you will see this one, and if you will convert this to base64 code, you can see here we don't have any data. So in case of empty report, as we have parameters in the BIP report, that's why this much of data we are getting. So based on this data only, it will generate the XML file, and there will be something, any side, some size of this file, right? Once the file will be created with this data, there will be some size, right? So let me check the size. So for checking the size, again we have to go below, and here we have to check the mapping. So you can see file created, but size is 237 byte only. You can see if no data, then size is this one, right? So this can be one or like 5 to 10 byte up and down based on the date parameters on anything, that here you can see, right, based on this value. So an average we are considering that if our file size is greater than 500 byte, just for average purpose, if our file size having 500 byte, it means we have few data, something in that BIP response, right? Then only we have to read the file. The same step I already mentioned here. Convert SOAP base64 code response into file reference. This step we have done. Now here we have to add the condition. If data in BIP report file, then we have to read the file data, else we have to map the response wrapper and end the integration, right? So just go to the integration here. Edit the integration again. And here you can see this is the response of that file once file generated after converting. So even as you can see that this is the XML file, right? So this is the XML file. If we will not have any data, that G will be there, right? G will not be there, right? If you will see the base64 code here. So even instead of checking that one, we can check the G, count of G. If count of G1 is 0, then we can be sure that we don't have data. That kind of things we can add the condition, or in case of CSV file or anything, we are already aware about the logic of the size. So I will just go for the size count only. So instead of checking the count of the report, so here we added that one. So we will go and we will add the condition. If the size will be more than 500 byte, then only we will read the file. So for adding the condition, here we have the switch statement. So I will drag this switch here. And in the switch here, we have to add the condition. So what condition we have to add? First give the name. I will give the name as data. Data available. This is the name of my condition, the name of the switch, and this condition we have to add. So here we have to check if size is greater than or equals to greater than 500, right? So where we will get the size? We will get the size from the response of the decode base64 code. This is the request and this is the response. Once you will expand this one, write response. Inside that write response, you can see the write response. Again, inside the write response, you have ICS file, and inside the ICS file we have file reference, and inside the property we have the file size. You can see the size. So I will drag this size here, and here I will make that condition greater than 500. Now this is the condition we added. If our file size is greater than 500, then only we will go and we will read the file. So now condition is added. So the switch is added here. We have to expand this switch here, and now we have to add the condition. For that, for now, if our size is greater than 500 KB, then we have to read the file, right? And this is the file we have to read. So I will go, and for reading the file, we have to add the stage file. So I will drag this stage file here, and here we have to give the name to the endpoint. So I will give the name as read stage. Continue. Now here we have to, as we want to read the file, we have two options to read the file. We can read entire file or we can read file in segments. So as right now we know that we have very less size of the report data coming from BIP reports. I will select read entire file operation, and here you can see we have two options: configure file reference yes or no. If we will select configure file reference no, then here we have to provide the file name and the directory we created here. So you can see this is the file name, this is the file name, and this is the directory we created. Or else simply we will select yes, and here we have to provide the file reference, and this is the file reference from this response of this endpoint. So I will go for file reference, I will go for the here, and here you will see in the decode where we will get the site. So before taking site, we will take the file reference. I will map the file reference here. Now I don't want to remove any trailer or anything, just done. We have to go and continue, and here we have to provide the schema, what kind of file it is going to generate. So it's going to generate the XML file, that kind of file, right? So this schema we have to provide. So we have to select the XSD here, XML schema, that simple XML document, and here we have to upload the XML file. So go continue, and here we have to drop the file. So this is the same file I will upload. So now I uploaded the same file that you can see access int underscore report.xml. This is the same file. Now you can see the select the schema element, that is data underscore ds. So what is this data underscore ds? You will be able to see here this one. Inside that we will one parameters value, and this is the record. This will be the array record, right? So now everything is done. Go back, go to continue and finish. So once you will finish, now you can see we added the condition to read the file, right? So every time I generally prefer while doing anything, I'm just using the save. So now here we have to, after reading the file, we have to add the loop. So suppose we have 10 record here. Suppose here we have 10 records. So what I will do, I will add the loop on G1, so that whatever number of record will be there in the file, based on that it will iterate the loop, and for each and every loop we will insert this data into the database table. So here first we have to add the loop. So inside the switch, once we read the file, we have to add the loop. So here you can see we have to use for each loop so that we can iterate based on the records. So drag this for each here, and here we have to provide, in the for each we have to provide the repeated element. So repeated element from where we will get? We will get repeated element from the read only. So here where is our read? So we are not able to see the read here because we by mistakenly we added the loop earlier before this stage. So before this, when we added the loop before this stage, before this loop we don't have this read option. That's why we are not able to see. We have to just go for reposition. So I will cut it here and I will paste it here. In OIC Gen 3, this is the facilities we are getting. So now here we added the stage before the loop. Now if you will go and edit the loop, you will get the stage file as a read stage. You can see here we have the read stage. Once you will expand, inside the read stage we have read response, and inside the read response you can see we have data ds, and inside the data ds we have the parameters and G1. This is the same here. Inside the data ds we have the parameters p underscore inv date, and there we have G1. You can see this is the parameters and this is the G1. So this G1, you can see this is the array element. This is the symbol of array, right? So once you will expand inside the G1, you will be able to see the column, all the column, whatever we have mentioned here, right? So now this array element we have to provide here in the current element, sorry, in the repeating element. Now we provided the repeating element, and now we have to provide the current element name, that will be the loop variable name. So I will give the name as for each underscore loop var. And here this is the for each name, so I will change the for each name to for each BIP record, and here I will use the same name for each BIP record underscore loop var, so that this loop var can be considered as a loop var of this loop. So now we are done. We added all the things. Just we have to come outside so that this loop can be configured. So now you can see loop is configured, but it's throwing one warning because we don't have anything added inside the loop. So now inside the loop we have to add the ATP endpoint to insert data into the table. You can see if you will go to the flow, the same we added in the data. In if data in BIP report, then read the file. We already read that. Else map the response. So we read the file. After iterate the loop over the BIP report, we already added the loop, and inside insert BIP report data into ATP table. So how we can insert BIP report data into ATP table? By adding the endpoint, that the ATP endpoint. So ATP connection we already created. So just select the connection here, What is the name of the connection? XXATP con. I will direct this XXATP con here. Now here we have to provide the endpoint names. I will give the name as insert ATP, as we are going to use insert operation. Here we have to select the operations. I will use perform an operation on a table. And here which operation we want to perform? We want to perform operation of insert so that we can insert data into the table. Click continue. Now here you can see it asking for a schema. What is the schema of the table we have used? So you can see this is our table and this is the schema of our table, right? So I will use this schema and will provide the schema here. And this schema is generally the user that you connected, you created, which user, in which user you created the table. So if you will see, go to the properties, you will be able to find the user here only. This is the same user, right? And as a schema here. So now we got to know the schema. We have to provide the table name. So this is our table name. If you don't know the table name, you can use wildcard operation, that is % to search the table name. So I will give the table name here. And what object type, that is table. So I will click on search this. If this table will present in this schema of the database, it will display here. You can see this is a table. Now we have to select this table in the right side. So click here, that it comes in the right side. Now we have to import this table into this connection. So click on this import table. Now table is imported here. For each and every table when we are adding in the ATP, it's required one key as a primary, but we don't have any column as a primary key here. But in OIC it required, so that it can provide any minimum value or that value in that row. So I will consider that OIC instance as a primary key only. Primary key configuration here, it means that simply that value cannot be null. That kind of things here. So click on continue. And now I don't want to configure anything. This is our table. Just click on continue. So once this will be done, you can see this is our insert operation. This is our table name. That's the parent table only. Click finish. This video like taken bit long time. That's why we will create another video, that is part 2, where we will add the exception handling, all the logic, exception handling, lookup logic. Instead of making the hard-coded value, we can use the lookup. All the things we will add in the next video. So now here you can see we added the endpoint to insert the data into the table. Now we have to provide the data to the endpoint. And we can provide the data to the endpoint using the mapper of insert ATP. So just click here, and from where we will get the value, we will get the value from this loop variable. So double click here. Find the loop variable in the left hand side. So loop variable, you can see for each BIP record underscore loop var. Expand this loop var. You can see G1. That G1 is right now, it's not in array element because we added the loop variable. Now this value we have to map. So if you will go here, this is the array element. Instead of adding the loop on the record, we can directly read the record and we can map to the insert. But I use loop so that you can insert the loop logic too. So I will map the instance. This, you can see, this is the instance ID, and this instance ID should be unique for each and every integration run. So if you will see here in the metadata, integration metadata, we have the instance ID in the runtime details, but this instance ID is is alphanumeric in Gen 3. In Gen 2 that's numeric value, but in Gen 3 it's alphanumeric value. So instead of using this one, we will use another logic, right? We will use date and time to make the ID, make the unique values, right? We will use. So I will not provide the instance ID mapping right now. I will go and provide the rest of the report mapping. So invoice ID, I will map here. As we are not going to map the array element, that's why we are not going to map here. Vendor ID, invoice number, invoice amount, invoice date, and the source. And here you can see this all are the extra column I added in the table so that we can identify when this integration run, who ran, all the details. So here in the creation date, I will search here current date time. Current. This is the current date. I will use current date in creation date. In even I will use the same current date in the last update date only also. Last update date will use current date. And the invoked by and created by, I will give the integration name. So integration name I will get in the metadata only. So integration details, I will give the name as integration name created by, and the last updated by, I will give the same name, integration last updated by. Now I provided all the mapping, just remaining the OIC instance ID. So let me add the logic of OIC instance ID. Go back here, save. And for OIC instance ID, I will use one variable where we will store the current date and time in the with the format of seconds. So for adding the variable, I will add variable in the start. I will use assign here, and I will give the assign name as default var. Default var, default assign I will use. And here we have to create the variables. I will create the variable name as instance id, and what value we want to provide in the instance id. So I want to provide the value. So I already have a code here. You can see this is the code. This is the code that it will convert the current date time into YYMMDD HMMM, this one, right? Date time. So this will be the value, and here we don't have a space, all these things, right? So I will copy this one and I will paste it here. So now you can see, so in the instance ID, the value will be like those are 2024 04 24 07 18. That kind of the value will be there in the instance ID. Now click outside. It's throwing an error. Let me check what is the error. The error is that we didn't configure this well. So here what we will do, we will remove this one. And what is there? You can see the format date time. I will drag the format date time from here only. Format date time, and inside the format date time, here you can see the parameters. We will use this value. This value. Right, and here instead of double quotes I will use single quotes. Now we are done, right? Once we will create, we will be able to configure, create this variable, right? Once I will go outside, the error can be removed. So again we have the error. Let me check why this error is coming here. The expression is invalid and cannot be passed. Prefix must be namespace. So let me check. Okay, so maybe the value we are getting error because of this string. So even let me remove this string from here. Let me first add the format date. What is the function name? Format date. I will drag this format date here. Format date time, and inside that format date time, first we have to select the string, and inside that string we have to use the current date time. This is the current date time I will use here, and the for the current date, sorry, it came outside. Inside that string, current date time, and here we have to provide the this value inside the single quotes, and here we have to provide the value in the single quotes. Why it came format here? Okay, it's, let me do it again. So here we have to just add the fn, sorry. Now I will copy this one. Hopefully this time it will work, right? Right here. If I will go outside, getting error, let me solve this error, right? Now I just edited that format, and this is the correct format. You can see the format that type function is going to convert the value in this format. The value is the our current string. So now you can see this variable instance id will hold the value as YYYMMDD hour minute second. So that value we are going to map in the mapper while inserting the data. So move to the code here. This is the insert mapping. And the insert mapping, just we have to go and instance ID, we have to map the variable. That is the OIC instance ID variable we created. Just map, go to the validate. And now we validated, go back, save. And now you can see our integration is ready to insert data into the table. So what step we have to follow? Once data inserted into the table, we have to map the response, and that's done, right? Just we have to map the response and it's completed. So here you can see this is the mapper, right? Here we have to map the response. So how we can map the response? In the response, if you will see what we were trying to map, that total record of that one inserted in the table. So how we can map? So here we read the data inside the condition, but outside this condition we will not get that value, right? So what we will do, we will create one variable with the name of count variable. We'll create one variable var underscore count, var underscore var underscore count count, and that value will store the number of record into the table. So right now I don't want to put anything. I will provide this value inside the stage only. So once we will read the data, so here you can see inside the condition we are going to read the data, and here we have to assign the count. So I will drag the assign here. I will select the variable. I will give the name as assign count, and here I will select the variable that we created. We created variable as var count, and here what value we have to provide? We have to use the count function. Here we have count this function, and here we have to provide the node set, that is the array. So that node set will come from the read one, right? So we have the read stage. Inside that one we have the g underscore one as a array element, so we will provide that one. So what it will do, it will count the value inside that read element, right? So whatever value will be there, it will come inside the variable. So now just go outside, save. So now here we have get the count, and outside this one we will add the mapping, right? So here instead of that one, instead of null value, I will assign the count with 0, so that if we will not have any records, it will show as 0. Now here we have to map in the mapper. Click here. As of now I am just going to map the success, and in next part we will create exception handling where we will map the logic for error and success and error both. So instead of in here in the status, create target node and book the value as success, and in the message I will give the name as concat. I will give the name total, and here we have to provide the count. So I will use the count function, and total instead of count function I have the variable, right? So I will use the variable total. Thus this will be the count record inserted into ATP table. That's the message we want to display. So see, tick here. So now we map the value. Just validate the integration. The validate the mapper here. And once we validate, go back. Now our integration is ready to activate, as we have already added the business identifier. Now you can see a status in configure. So total, if you will see what we have done, we added the trigger endpoint to create the configure the request and response payload. We added the assign to create the instance ID and the variable which store the count. We invoke the BIP report using the SOAP call, and we converted the BIP data, the SOAP response base64 into file reference. We added the switch. If file reference having the size, the file size having something, then only we are going to assign the count, and after that we added the for each loop. Inside the for each loop we are inserting data into the ATP table. Here you can see as we have only one condition, that's why it's showing here. If we don't have anything, here. So even we can add the condition if we don't have anything. So I will get the otherwise condition. So now otherwise will be added here, you can see. So this is the if condition. If this condition will be true, then it control will move inside, or else control will go in the otherwise. And in otherwise, what we want to do? In otherwise, suppose let me add the log message. In otherwise, here let me add the logger. Where is the logger? Logger, and I will give the name logger endpoint as empty BIP logger. And here we have to value, we have to what value we want to display, or what message we want to display. We want to display that BIP report is empty. Now this is the value we want to display. So now done. In the response, in other case it will display the data. And here our requirement was, if we don't have data or size in that one, we want to and our integration. So providing the mapping here, what we will do, the mapping, we are just moving the outside this one, this switch, right? So what we can do, we will provide the mapping here too, so that the integration can be and. So we will drag this, we will cut this mapper here, and we will provide the mapping here only in case of this one. We will expand this one. So after this, where we don't have option, so let me provide the logger here, paste. In otherwise, I added the logger, one logger, and I will add one logger inside the if statement. So once loop will end, this logger should be there. So I will remove this logger here, the mapper here, and I will map the mapper outside the loop once loop will end. So paste. So once loop will end, it will display the success message and display the count. And in case of that empty otherwise case, I will add the mapper again. So here we have to add the mapper. And you can see we have only one mapper remaining, one endpoint, that start rest. So that's showing here. Just click on create. So the new mapper will be added here. And in the mapper, we want to display message as error or something, integration successful. Integration successful, but we don't have data, some kind of thing. Success and message, we want to display that BIP report is empty. BIP report is empty. That kind of things we want to display. So now we are done with the mapping. We added two mapper. One mapper will display the count. Another mapper will display the BIP report is empty condition. You can see. So if you will see the switch here, this is the condition as per our design. So you can see, if data in BIP report file, then read the file, else map the response payload and the flow. You can see if we have data, this condition will flow, and inside that it will iterate the loop, all these things. If we don't have data, go to the otherwise, and here it will display the log message and it will map the and. So I just want to map the logger before this one. So this is the integration flow we created, so that it will read the data from BIP report, insert data into the table. So now done, we have to save. And friend, if you like the way I explain and if you like the content I deliver, don't forget to subscribe this channel and like the video. It will be really helpful for us, and it will motivate us to create that video again and again. So now it will take a bit of time to load. So what I will do till now, I will delete the record from this table so that it will get the data from scratch. So delete from, two record deleted. So now we don't have any record inside the table. So once we'll run the integration, that record will be inserted into this table. Now save. You can see integration is activated. Now we have to run the integration. Run the integration. Go to the body, and here you can see this is the parameters. Let me pass the parameters as 24. That 1424. It will have some data. So click on run. So integration will be executed. It will process the flow and data will be inserted into the table, and it will return back the response. So just waiting for the integration completed so that we can see the response here. And once we will see the response, we will go and check the loop, that table. If you will search the table here, you can see one record inserted as it's running the loop. So it will take a bit time. You can see the 4 record inserted. You can see 8 record inserted. Right. So I think it's done. So here you can see our integration is also completed. And if you will see response, success, total 8 record inserted into ATP. And that's true. We have total 8 records here. You can see we have total 8 record here. And you can see the instance ID. This is the actual instance ID we added, and this instance ID is nothing but a timestamp. You can see 2024 04 24 14, and 14 is the minute, hour, minute, second. 14 it means 2. You can see 24 4 2024 minute, hour, second. And if you will see that is completed, right? If I will pass the incorrect date, that parameters, that with 25 we don't have any record into that table BIP report, right? With 25 years. So if I will run this integration, it will not, it will call the BIP report, get the data from BIP report. As BIP report doesn't have data and we pass the XML format, so it will create the file, but size will be less than like 500 bytes. So it will not process further and it will show the log message as success and BIP report is empty. So that kind of things we added, and in this case there will not be any data inside the table because it's not inserted. Now if you will see, instead of 2025, if I pass 24, and if you will pass, instead of 2, let me pass 1 and run. So let me see after 1 January how many records are there into the BIP report and how many it's returning, so that we can get in the response only, and that much of record will inserted into the table. You can see inserted, and you can see it's returning the 7 records. So based on, okay, so on 1st of January we have only 7 record, and that's all 7 record inserted into the table. So if you will see the table, so there are 8 records, and now if you will execute this query, it will be 7 more. So 8 7 15, there will be total 15 record, and you can see below here we have total 15 record. And these all are the value, that invoice ID, vendor ID, invoice number, all these things, right? You will be able to see these all are the invoice number. So friend, this is the way we can create integration, and I explain you all these things. If you have any point and you want to ask anything, don't forget to comment. And yes, if you want to connect with us on LinkedIn, you can move to the LinkedIn and search with Aaron Zafar. You can connect with us on LinkedIn. Thank you so much guys for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe our channel. It's our humble request. And if you like the content, you can share this video with your colleague, with your juniors in your company, organization, WhatsApp group, all these things. Thank you so much again for watching.